know, like, sometimes it's hard to tell what happens with the shoulder. So what you can do is you have the person do the movement, reach for your back pocket, and then you say, well, let's keep the shoulder there, and you just turn back to the front. But that makes clear, sorry, but, you know, that makes clear, because you kind of, it separates out. So, you know, you get the, well, what's going on in the shoulder? What's going on in the back? Sometimes it's hard to tell. So if we bring your back to the same place as you started from, we see what happened to your shoulder. Or if we bring your shoulder back, we see what happens to your back. So that's a way, not just for us to see it, but really to help the person feel, oh, those things, you know, to begin to differentiate those in the action is really useful. Yeah? Like, you know, I mean, so we're, you know, one way to do that, like a simpler way to do that is when you're turning, you know, and you have somebody turn, you say, okay, well, let's unturn you, right? And then they can see how much they arched to do that. So kind of like separating out the planes of action. And I mean, I use that often with people, just to, you know, they go, well, you know, it's the same on both sides, you know. One side they're arching, one side they're not. Like I said, well, let's just bring you back on this side. Okay, now let's bring you back on this side. Oh, I didn't even know I was doing that. But then they do it, they can, oh yeah, I am doing that. Gives them a chance to recognize it. And I think that's really useful, because the other thing, I mean, I think one of the greatest dangers is, you know, in that, I think this goes back to what you're talking about what's explicit, is that what can happen though is that the teacher notices something and the student doesn't, right? And then, you know, it's like you create the situation where the student can feel kind of, like, if they believe that that you noticed it, they can feel really stupid at that point. Well, I just can't feel it, you know? Or they go, well, I think it's just too subtle for me, which is just their point, and they don't know how you're talking about. Okay. But, you know, when you're teaching, there's such a thing as a mnemonic device, you know, something to help people remember, right? Like an acronym or whatever. And I, you know, I think there are ways in which, like, this has to do with your question too about, you know, what you give somebody at the end of the lesson, which you might give them during the lesson to take with them, but, you know, like, what ways could we make it easier for people to understand what's going on with them, right? So sometimes, like, I didn't bring it with me because I couldn't find my pad, but, you know, I have a little, it's not an iPad, but, you know, it's a
device.
Yeah, device. But it has a nice little pouch for it, right? And it's a rectangle. And so sometimes I use that to show people how their trunk is moving as a rectangle, right? That's a really useful model. And then sometimes I just talk about the three balls: the head, the chest, and the pelvis. Those are different ways of reducing the complexity so that people can start to see significant relationships, right? And I think that's really important. Like, you have millions of sensory neurons, millions of them, right? That are constantly you know, telling you what's going on. And I don't think that people are less aware. I just think that it's their ability to make sense out of all of those things, to make the connections. And I think a lot of what we're teaching people is how to make sense of what they're sensing, you know, how to put it together. And I don't think it's just about giving people a bunch of different awarenesses, you know, like feeling here, feeling there, feeling here. It's beginning to sense the relationships and the connections. And so the model of the trunk as a rectangle, or how these balls are moving in relationship to each other, or how the rings are moving, I think that makes it really helpful for the students, and it makes it like less mysterious. And I think not just mysterious, but less scary. Because I think there's something for a lot of people about their body is something they know so little about that it's really frightening. You know, and people, you know, some of the people that we see, because of the trauma of the injury or accident they had, and then the added trauma of the medical treatment they had, it's, you know, they have this, their body is really scary to them. And so I think that there's a way that we can make it more, say user-friendly wouldn't be the right word. How about inhabitable? You know, in a comfortable way. I think that really is important. Okay. So we continue with this a little bit more? Mm-hmm. So now, when you switch, so the idea, you know, so there's a couple of things that are really important in terms of what we've talked about before, and let's see if we can bring that into play here. You know, whether you're here or not before, it doesn't matter, because I think it's part of our discourse and exploration as spelling grades teachers. So, you know, does the shoulder girdle move in relationship to the chest? That's, you know, so is it just happening in the glenohumeral joint, in the shoulder joint, or is there this movement of the shoulder girdle around the chest? And then, what shape are they making with their trunk? So if you look at these two rings as representing the two ends of the trunk, what shape is somebody making? You know, so, and that goes back to what Leslie was talking about. How much are they side bending? How much are they twisting? How much are they folding or arching? And I think that you begin to see something about, I mean, I think the shape will be different on both sides, right? Mm-hmm. And so you can begin to ask yourself, well, how does that relate to which side is easier? You know, how does the shape that they're making or the way they're organizing, coordinating the different parts of themselves, how does that relate to the ease or difficulty of that action? All right, so let's see if that, just to take you a little further along the same path, all right?